The 20th century is considered one of the most violent times in human history, with a great number of conflicts, whose violence has surpassed that of previous wars. This century led people to engage in different efforts towards avoiding conflicts and its consequences, under the impression that Western societies would be able, as winners of the Cold War, to bring peace to conflicting societies. One of these measures was the creation and implementation of the concept of peacebuilding. Since its creation, there has been many discourses on how to effectively carry out a peace-building operation.
The first of them followed democracy as the main line to reach peace-building. Boutros Ghali, the then Secretary-General, stated in the Agenda for Peace in 1992 and the 48th session of the General Assembly in 1993 that
without democracy, no sustainable development will occur, and without such development, peace cannot long be maintained. There is an obvious connection between democratic practices and the achievement of true peace and security in any new and stable political order.
However, this discourse did not hold on, because, as evidenced in Angola's failed elections of 1992, democracy by itself cannot address the deep roots of any conflict.
Moving on, in the mid-1990s, peace-building changed its focus towards civil society and the achievement of justice. This approach focused on reconciliation and humanitarianism as the way to reach a lasting peace. Local organizations and NGOs were seen as agents of peace-building and social spaces as spaces of reconciliation. Civil society was a popular alternative when democratic peace-building experienced public and undeniable failure.
But another breaking point happened. The attacks of 9/11 were the key event in this change of framework. After realizing that peace-building as civil society was not really the way to go as it did not prevent terrorism and present a danger to their countries, the international community changed the focus towards peace-building as state-building. In his 2004 book, Fukuyama defines the process of state-building as the creation of new government institutions and the strengthening of existing ones, while Darwin's definition of state-building is the use of military power in the aftermath of a conflict to underpin an enduring transition to democracy. Security became the priority and peace started to be seen as order, instead of as an expression of civil participation or justice. In recent years, since the launch of the war on terror, state-building has gained new currency among many in the international community, particularly the U.S. government.
The target of state-building is the failed state. Though the concept of state-building did not take full force until after 9/11, failed states have been a present concern in the international arena for longer than that. In this respect, the former UN Secretary-General Boutros Ghali stated in 1993, "We also face a new fact of international life, the failed state. Regimes are proving unable to cope with the withdrawal of superpower support, weak institutions, collapsing economies, natural disasters, and ethnic strife.
Complicated military tasks must be complemented by measures to strengthen institutions, encourage political participation, protect human rights, and promote economic and social development."
As it was mentioned before, democracy on its own can't be effective. There is a need for governmental institutions that ensure that the situation does not return to the conflict setting so that democracy can actually work. This is what state building aims to achieve. In this sense, the most important element for countries to achieve peace is not their form of government, but the degree of government. States with weak governments cannot prevent conflict, protect human rights, or to satisfy the needs of its population, because they are not able to hold themselves together. Failed states cannot fulfill the obligations a government has towards its people. They cannot ensure their people's basic needs, much less their political rights. As a result, it is important to first address the institutional and structural problems, so that later other fundamental issues can be solved in a lasting way. When the tools that would allow the effective solutions are available, it is important to engage first in the task of state building to successfully have a process of peace building.
However, there is still a lot of problems with this framework. As a Western political model, the state, that is created after the conflict does not take into account the specific circumstances of the country's context. What worked for Western societies not always can be applied to all post-conflict societies and work.
Forcing the creation of institutions by foreign intervention will not match the interests and motives of the population inside the country. They have ideas and traditions different from Western ideas that are unknown to those implementing the state building.
This is the case of Somaliland, where the West has not accepted this country as a sovereign state because it did not follow the democratic state-building standards in their post-conflict reconstruction. It doesn't matter that the living conditions of the population are much better than they were years before, or that the state is actually meeting its responsibilities as a government. What is important is that it is not a democratic state.
A second objection to this discourse is that it violates the sovereignty of the states. By implementing state building in a post-conflict country, the international community creates a contradiction with the principle of the countries that undergo an state-building process are supervised by an or other international community representatives that are in charge of ensuring that the country follows an acceptable line of policy.
This is the case of Bosnia, where all the decisions made by the post-conflict government were influenced by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, as well as the Office of the High Representative. These institutions, especially the OHR, were fundamentally shaping what the Bosnian government could or could not do, and their approval was needed for policies to be accepted.
This is a major breach to what the international community has identified as the sovereignty of each country, because an international actor is influencing over the internal politics of an independent state. As a result, the government of Bosnia has to respond to the international community's demands instead of its people's.
Furthermore, sometimes the focus on security might lead to violation of human rights and to ignore other important problems inside the countries. For example, in the Kivu region of Congo, the fighting and unrest continue years after peace accords were signed in 2003. The international community maintains a huge and costly peacekeeping force, but has failed to address the land tenure disputes that lie at the heart of the violence.
This approach, however, raises the question of what or who development is for. Are development and support for failed states intended to maintain the status quo of existing governance systems and the interests of the donors, or do they aim to assist the people on the ground in the affected countries?
It is a fact that no peace-building discourse has been perfect, or even mostly adequate to reach peace in failed states, as history has proved. However, peace-building has been evolving through the years to reach a better result. At the moment, the more popular theoretical approach is state-building, but, as it has been proved, there are still many issues that have to be taken into consideration. In the future, it is possible that state-building will keep improving as new analyses emerges in order to fill the gaps that are not being covered, such as cultural context. A better framework could be a balance between the sectors that need to be improved, a balance between the civil participation and the structure of the government, but without taking into consideration if the form of the government fits a Western standard. It is possible that there will be new experiences in the future that will put in stake the actual theoretical framework of state building. However, we expect that these could help create a better approach on how to deal with conflict and achieve a lasting peace.